I'll start with Latrell Wrightsell. It's maybe the biggest story surrounding this game. Nate Oats lists him as day-to-day. Says he's evaluated every single day. It'll be a game-time decision. Just a gut feel from you. Do you think you see Latrell Wrightsell tonight for the Tide?
Man, I just don't know. I mean, if it was a bone bruise, an ankle, something along those lines, then I would say, yeah. I mean, he's going to gut it out. This is what every player dreams of, being in a Sweet 16 with a chance to go to an Elite Eight and a Final Four. There's nothing that would keep you from playing. But this isn't a Nate Oats decision. It's not a Latrell Wrightsell decision. It's a decision by the medical staff. We've talked about it in the past with a head injury, the protocols that go along with that. That's not their call. And hopefully he'll be ready to go. But the only silver lining is you have played without him, and nobody wants to play without Latrell. So if that's the case, this team has a lot of experience with dealing with injuries, whether it's Latrell or Rylan Griffin, who went out with a lower leg injury late in the season. You would love to have all hands on deck. But what this team proved, especially against Grand Canyon, the majority of that game without Latrell, is that they could figure out ways to win. And it wasn't just that Latrell was out. You had Grant Nelson in foul trouble. You had Jaron Stevenson, who had fouled out. You had Rylan Griffin with cramps late in that game and wasn't able to play the normal minutes that he typically does. But other guys were able to step up. Most notably, Mo Diabate, who has not played much this year, comes in and essentially wins the game for Alabama. Offensive rebounding, putbacks, I think 8 or 9 points, 5 rebounds, all of those coming on the offensive end. So I think this team has confidence that they can figure it out. And some of these young players like Mo Diabate, Sam Walters, who hit a huge three late in that game, and Jaron Stevenson is obviously going to be excited to play his hometown team there in North Carolina. There are other guys that have had an opportunity to play more, and I think they'll be ready to go regardless of Latrell Wrightsell's status.
When we saw Davin Cosby in the walking boot and found out he was going to be out of the NCAA tournament, I thought, it's a tough loss for Alabama. It was just magnified, though, when Wrightsell went out. I mean, that would have been a guy, BP, that you could have leaned on a little bit. Yeah. I mean, that guy, when he gets hot, you've seen it already this year. When he gets hot from outside, A, he's not afraid to shoot it, and B, when he gets hot, he's as good as anybody out there.
Yeah, Ryan, it's a great point, because that was just kind of a side note when it happened. He wasn't somebody that was in your rotation. Now, he was when Latrell went out the first time, and he showed what he could do, hit 5 threes against Ole Miss in a big road win late in the season. So you would love to have him right now, and obviously that's not the case. But the thing about what Nate Oats does in his system and his recruiting is you hear the term positionless basketball, and you've got guys that can play multiple positions. A guy like Sam Walters can play the power forward. He can play shooting guard. He can do a lot of different things. And so you can play a little bigger if that's the case. The thing that you worry about it, and I saw this late in the game, is why I was really amazed that Alabama was able to finish the Grand Canyon game on a 10-0 run, holding them scoreless the last 4 minutes, is this team looked a little tired late because of Latrell Wrightsell out in the foul trouble and some of the injuries. You weren't able to get Mark Sears and Aaron Estrada, Rylan Griffin. He wasn't out of that game to rest. He was out because he had cramps. But are you going to be able to get those perimeter guys rest? The good news is in the NCAA tournament, timeouts are longer, halftime's longer, and those guys are going to need it. Because I don't see a scenario where Nate Oats is going to be able to rest Mark Sears and Aaron Estrada, or Rylan Griffin for that matter, if he can help it.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to ask you that. Can you get 40 out of Sears tonight, you think? Not point. My gosh, if you got 40 points out of him, you'd love it. But can you get 40 minutes out of Mark Sears? Do you think he can give Alabama 40 minutes on the rest he's got now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd almost be surprised if that's not the case. I think that he's in unbelievable shape, as all these guys are. And the training staff, Clark Holder and this training staff is as good as it gets in college athletics. And these players are so dialed into their rest, their diet, making sure that leading up to a game, that they are rested and ready to go. So I do believe that if Mark Sears needs to go 40, that he's going to be in there for 40 minutes. And you might try to get him a break, a possession before a media timeout, stuff like that. But Mark Sears, I don't believe if he came out, it was not for very long at all against Grand Canyon. And he looked a little bit winded. But again, that was the second game in 3 days. You've had some rest, not as much as you'd probably like, having the Thursday, Saturday turnaround in the Sweet 16 and hopefully the Elite Eight. So you don't have quite as much time in between games, but you do have a little more time. And Mark Sears, while he's practiced, he's gotten shots up, he'll be dialed in and ready to go. They've also kept these guys off their feet, anticipating that they may have to go 40 minutes.
There have not. Bryan Passink is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. You'll hear him with Chris Stewart, Tom Stipe, and the gang on the Crimson Tide Sports Network tonight from Crypto.com Arena for Alabama and North Carolina. There are maybe exactly zero players in the history of college basketball that have played 168 games. I don't know if that has been done. Maybe it has. It's even less likely that they're 6'11", 240 and have played 168 games, but that's Armando Bacot. He's extremely experienced. He's seen everything. He's big. He's good. What do you do with Bacot?
Yeah, so he's really good. And Alabama has not had a ton of success against really big, good interior players. And I think earlier in the year, when you had that stretch where you played Zach Edey with Purdue, Ryan Kalkbrenner at Creighton, and Omar Ballo at Arizona, all 7-footers that are three of the best centers in the country, this team struggled against those. You had Mohamed Wagee and Nick Pringle. I think they both fouled out of each of those games. So you look at the track record, and that leads you to be a little bit concerned. But I would say Nick Pringle and Mohamed Wagee are playing their best basketball, especially Nick Pringle. And I think he's excited about an opportunity to play another one of the nation's best centers, because earlier in the year did not have much success against those three guys. And a big reason why Alabama wasn't able to win those games. But Nick Pringle has been so much better late in the season. He's defending without fouling. And that's going to be a key to this game. If Alabama's interior players can defend Bacot and do it in a tough physical way, but also keep him off the free throw line. Easier said than done, but that's why you play a difficult schedule like Nate Oats puts together. You want to get better. Win or lose, you get better from those games. And I think Alabama will get better from it, and hopefully we see the results tonight.
Yeah, you saw it with your own two eyes. We had a member of our audience point out Alabama's losses this year. Ohio State did not make the tournament. Every other loss was a 7-seed or better in the NCAA tournament. And I think it was 6 of those losses are in the Sweet 16 because you lost to Tennessee twice. So, I mean, when you look back at the losses, I know it was more losses than you would like to take as an Alabama fan, but you look back at it, there weren't a lot of bad losses in there as far as the quality of team.
No bad losses. And more importantly, I think it prepares you for nights like tonight. You've seen the best of the best. You've seen the best centers in the country. You've seen the best teams. And while the results weren't what they would like, this is a different Alabama team. And listen, I'll say this, North Carolina, everybody's different now than they were in November and December. But I think this Alabama team has a little bit of an edge that we haven't seen throughout the season. They've been questioned with their defense and toughness. And defense and toughness is what won them the first 2 rounds of this tournament. Charleston is not a great team, but they are a really good offensive team. And Alabama did a very good job against Charleston on the perimeter. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. And Grand Canyon, while they don't have the national reputation, they're not as good as North Carolina. They have big-time athletes. They have high major players. And I thought the defense and the toughness and things that this team has not done with consistency throughout the year, they did in Spokane. And I expect that to translate to hopefully these 2 games in Los Angeles.
If the game is called, now I don't know how the game was called against Grand Canyon. It was so bizarre. But but it was a bloodletting. I mean, the officials let it get physical. Do you think Nate Oats would prefer that tonight if he had officials that just swallow the whistle and let it be physical?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think what he wants is consistency.
Yeah.
And that's something that has frustrated fans in college basketball, but especially the NCAA tournament, being around different fan bases in Spokane, now LA. The one thing that everybody can agree on is the officiating has not been consistent. And so I think these players, they just want to know where the line is and what's a foul and what's not a foul. And hopefully, once you get to this level, just like teams, officials have to advance to these late rounds in the NCAA tournament. So these should be the best officials who have called the best games. And whether they call it tight, whether they let them play, as long as it's consistent, I think everybody's okay with that.
I still laugh, and I know you didn't get to hear it because you were doing the game with Chris in Spokane, but I can't even remember what play it was, but they go to Gene Steratore asking him if it could elevate to an F1, and he said, guys, I really don't know what you would have to do in this game to get a flagrant foul. that was the way it was officiated, though.
It was. And listen, to me, that's what made that victory even sweeter is the way it played out. It was about toughness and grit and defense. And those are not ways that Alabama's won games this year. They won it with offense and scoring and knocking down threes. And to win a game like the Grand Canyon game and the way it was called, even though, I don't think a lot of people love the way that game was called on both ends, the way it played out, I think gives this team confidence on the defensive end.